You're now watching the Mike Missanelli podcast on the BetRivers Network.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Mike Missanelli podcast. Thursday, January 18th, podcast number 156. It is brought to you by BetRivers and BetRivers Casino and the people at Rush Street Interactive. A little later in the show, yes, the one and only Angelo Cataldi will join us. This will be our third conversation. And I wanted to talk to Ange this time because I know what he would be saying on the radio about this Philadelphia Eagles coaching situation. In fact, I've heard him say it. He's not a Nick Sirianni fan, and only he can exclaim in his words why. And that's going to come up a little later. So let's just start the show with Eagles talk. Now, by now, we kind of thought that maybe some kind of a move would be made on the head coach. As long as this goes on, it may look like Sirianni is going to survive. However, I caution the people. 9 days that went by before the Eagles zipped Doug Peterson back in the day. And the reason why that happened is because Doug Peterson would not come back under Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman's parameters to accept coordinators that they wanted hired on his staff. So I don't know if the same thing is going to happen. I would suggest that Sirianni would not do the same thing Doug Peterson did back in the day, which is to say F off. Sirianni would take the job under any circumstances. He would be a yes man because he's a young guy. It's good to be an NFL coach. He's not going to squander that if they say, okay, we're going to keep you on, but you got to work with the guys that we choose. I would think that would be a no-brainer for Sirianni. The other thing is that they're awaiting and processing and interviewing and talking to as many people as they can to figure out whether they should actually zip Sirianni. So all these drips are coming in a bucket, drip, 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 and then eventually the water will overflow. When that date is going to come, I don't know. And right now, I don't know whether Sirianni is going to be back as the head coach. What could save him? Well, what could save him is what I just mentioned. They pick the coordinators. They pick the staff. He's the head coach. They save him. And it will go in line, secondly, with Jeffrey Lurie's ego, because Jeffrey Lurie trumpeted this hire of Sirianni 3 years ago as another one of his brilliant decisions, that he found this guy under rocks that nobody else could find because we're the geniuses. And if he fired him, he would look ridiculous. So they're the two things that are in Sirianni's favor. Now, the word is that Jeffrey is not in town right now. So there is no interview going on with Sirianni and Lurie. And it was reported that Sirianni, along with Harry Roseman, are busy researching and talking to possible coordinator candidates. That would seem to indicate that Sirianni's in on the process. I don't know if that's true or not. Lurie would have to be in on that process. And right now, apparently, he's in St. Martin, kicking it with his wife. You know, just a little postseason escape. I would probably do the same thing. St. Martin is a very interesting little island, and I have a St. Martin story that's going to come a little later on Mike Unleashed. You know, St. Martin has a naked beach. It's half French, it's half Dutch. I've been on that beach. I'll tell you about it in a little later. All right. So here is the situation with the Eagles. Let's be honest. Now, I counted, let me see. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 new players that they would need to formulate a team that would be competitive and maybe even a playoff competitive team. Let's look at the offense first of all. They need 3 running backs. 3. Not 1, not 2, but 3. DeAndre Swift probably not going to be back. For whatever reason, they didn't really believe that much in DeAndre Swift. Boston Scott, I've had enough of, and Kenny Gainwell, who was their draft pick. I think this is the expiration date for Kenny Gainwell. They don't want to look ridiculous releasing a draft pick, but now they can do it because some years have gone by with the guy. You got to refresh that position completely. You've got to get a third receiver, maybe even a fourth receiver. You got 2 receivers. I don't know what AJ's mental condition is going to be when he comes back next year. Who knows? He could be diva squared next year with the way this season ended. And you got Devontae, who's reliable. You're going to have to think about a contract extension for Devontae, however. You're going to have a third guy who can make a difference. You can't have Quez Watkins and Zacchaeus and Greg Ward if they keep on the practice squad. You got to get new at that position. Also, you may have to think now about drafting a right tackle. Lane Johnson, how many years do you have left? 2 years? The guys they have right now aren't capable of replacing Lane Johnson. In fact, there's going to be an offensive line shift with Cam Jurgens moving over to center. If Kelsey resigns, he hasn't done it yet, and I don't know what he's going to do. My thinking is, why would he want to come back to this situation? So then you need a right guard, and then you have to get a tackle who could listen. Mailata hasn't been great, and Lane Johnson's got 2 more years. So you got to think about that position. And this is before I even get to the defense. You go to the defense, you go, my whole existence is built on rushing the quarterback, getting pressure on the quarterback with 4. Did they do that well last year? Josh Sweat, enough. Enough. We know what he is. On the other side, Reddick, you got to have to keep him. You got to play him in a different capacity. Your tackles then have to upgrade. They've got some tackles. The kids from Georgia have to grow. They have to get a little more mature. I'm okay with the tackles at this point because you got a couple backups who can play. Fletcher Cox, listen, I don't get involved in sentimentality. Now, that's a flaw of mine, I guess. But Fletcher Cox should not be re-signed. You shouldn't be wasting money on a guy like Fletcher Cox just because you're sentimental. And the same thing goes for Brandon Graham. And I know Eagle fans get emotionally attached to these kind of players that have served the franchise well, but it's time to move on and get fresher. You know, why would you waste, I don't know, if you would pay Brandon Graham $8 million to come back, that's $8 million you can use somewhere else. If you would play Fletcher Cox $10 million to come back, that's $10 million you can do somewhere else. You got to refocus. Linebackers, oh my God. They got to rebuild the whole linebacking core. They got to rebuild their safeties. A lot of people like Blankenship, but what is he really? He's a guy who's going to hit hard every now and then. He gets beaten pass coverage, and he gets hurt because he hits hard. And then the corners, what do you do there? With 2 31-year-old cornerbacks now coming back next year, you need a lot of players. So maybe Sirianni is the coach for that kind of rebuild, because that's what it looks like to me. 2 years ago, you had an MVP quarterback who could raise you to heights where you got to a Super Bowl. Do you look at it now and say that team's going to come back and challenge for a Super Bowl? No. So this situation, to me, is really in jeopardy on what they're going to do. Uncertainty abounds in personnel and coaching staff. They're a mess right now. And I never thought I would say that this soon after coming into this year where they started 10-1 and everybody thought they were a Super Bowl contender. Let's bring in producer Darren. Darren, your thoughts on where the Philadelphia Eagles stand right now?
It sounds hopeless. But look, this league is a week-to-week league anymore. And teams every season prove that you can turn a team around in one offseason. Now, I'm not saying that they can turn around and have a roster like the 49ers or the Ravens in one offseason, but you can make a big difference. The problem is the general manager's track record in drafting is not strong, and they need a strong draft this offseason. They have to get younger in a lot of positions. Cornerback, offensive line. They're old. They got old quick. So there's a lot that they have to get done, and it helps that the league overall is a bad product right now. There's a half dozen really good teams in this league right now. The rest are subpar at best. So, yeah, they can turn it around. I don't know that they can become a Super Bowl contender, a vibrant Super Bowl contender after this offseason, but they can certainly make waves. But the general manager has to draft better consistently and stop bringing in the scraps from other teams via free agency.
All right, so they're in flux, and the first thing that we will be all over is this coaching situation. On where it's funny that they haven't announced if they are in love with Sirianni or if he is in the planning of them hiring new coordinators. Why they would just come out and say and end the speculation. But I guess maybe when Laurie gets back from his vacation, they'll do that. But we'll be all over. Whatever happens, we'll have a podcast on it. All righty, folks. Well, in the midst of this Eagles turmoil, we needed to bring in an expert on turmoil and also an expert on just burying a head coach who didn't live up to his responsibility. So on that note, let's bring in the legend, the great Angelo Cataldi joins us. Hello, Ange. How you doing?
Mike, when there's a crisis, I'm the first one to call. I'm great because I don't panic. I don't get nervous. It's perfect.
No, and here's the beauty. Nobody buries a coach like you can. So
Wow.
On that note, and I kind of get an inkling of how you feel about this, because I've seen some things around the web where you have been quoted. You do not want Nick Sirianni back in this situation, do you?
It is I am incredulous that there are people who do. My only thing is I have to believe they did not watch the last half of the previous season, what we just witnessed. Because Mike, you and I we've been through a lot of coaches together, a lot of managers together. No one in my 33 years at WIP or since I left has done a worse job of coaching their team than Nick Sirianni did this season. And I'm amazed that we are now on Thursday and he is still employed by that team.
What do you think is going on right now? We know the MO of Jeffrey Lurie, where he's the word is that he's in St. Martin, for crying out loud, looking to purchase some kind of a boat. But you know how this works, that he's going to use his so-called expertise and his analytical approach to find the newest, hottest coordinators to give to Nick Sirianni if he preserves them. Or at the end of that week, or end of his evaluation process, he's going to say, Nick, you're gone, or Nick, you need to accept the job under my terms, and here are my terms. So what do you think is actually going to happen?
Mike, I think he already did accept the job under Lurie's terms. And I think the reason that he isn't fired now is that Lurie and Roseman realized that a lot of the bad decisions that went into the second half of the season were not even Sirianni's. There is no doubt in my mind that the decision to go from Sean Desai to Matt Patricia was not Sirianni's. This came from the top. You know how I know that? Because Roseman and Lurie brought Patricia on. They didn't check with Sirianni and say, do you want Matt Patricia? They put him on the staff in case it was like he was the plan B. And then they went to him, and somehow they took an impossibly awful situation and made it worse. It's almost impossible to do. So now they're evaluating him, and if they're being somewhat logical, they're going, well, it isn't all Sirianni's fault. We let him down the path. We didn't give him any linebackers. We didn't give him any secondary people. James Bradbury couldn't have been more toasted than he was. So they must now be wondering if somehow they can preserve the reputation of Sirianni for another year, knowing that it's bad for business, Mike. The fans don't want him, and the fans are not going to buy into another season of Nick Sirianni. There's your problem.
Yeah, it's exactly the way I feel about it. So you're right. In a way, their points in Sirianni's favor, that they saddled him with a bad situation, so it would be unfair to judge him by that situation. However, the flip side of that is, and you and I both know it because we evaluate coaches, when you lose 6 of your last 7 games and that team is fragmented apart, that is on the coach's head. He was unable to fix that league to epic historic proportions.
You're 100% right, Mike. And further, here's an example, all right? They played the Giants in the last game of the regular season. The Giants use a very similar blitz scheme to what Tampa Bay does. So all they had to do is go to school on Wink Martindale and what he was doing when the Giants beat them in the final game of the season, bludgeon them, and go, well, we're going to have to do something about the blitz. This is a stat that is like, this alone should get Nick Sirianni fired. With 8 days to prepare for the playoffs, they blitzed wildly. Todd Bowles blitzed the whole game 10 times, Mike. A guy came from the defensive line, unmolested to the quarterback. No one touched a blitzer on 10 separate plays in the game. That is coaching malpractice. You understand? That you can say, oh, Hurts has to figure it out. Hurts had 1.3 seconds to get rid of the friggin' ball. No, that was all. And the reason Hurts came off the field without a sterling endorsement of these morons is because they led him to slaughter. He had no chance with that kind of coaching. The coaching was the reason. That alone should get Sirianni fired. You just said it. He had all those weeks to fix it. Did he fix anything?
No. And that shows Really, that's more telling about a coach than going on a win streak. To be honest with you,
Right.
when you have turmoil and you're unable to fix it, what kind of a coach are you? Because that's what
Right.
one of the responsibilities is. So as we sit here, and I think I'm kind of agreeing with you that they may look at, well, we gave him a bad deal with the defense coordinator, and that started the disintegration. However, the other thing is this: Lurie has always operated with look who I found guy. Look how smart I am. I find
Yeah.
these guys that nobody else finds. I found Andy Reid. I was innovative enough to go with Chip Kelly. Doug Peterson. So these are my discoveries. And for him to fire Sirianni is to admit that he did that wrongly.
Right.
Can he handle that ego-wise?
All right, let's start with Lurie. All right, Mike. He's now owned the Eagles for 30 years. He's got one champion. 30 years, one championship. There's 32 teams. Each team should win one every 32 years, right? So he's not the genius he thinks he is. That's number one. And then Roseman, how do you put a team together and ignore the linebacker and safety positions? How do you do that? Because he put a lot of talent on that team, but he ignored those positions. And then we get to Sirianni. I'm just going to say it straight, Mike. You know how when you're talking to somebody after a while, you know whether or not they got a brain? I got to interview Sirianni after every game for the first two seasons he was here. He never struck me as a bright guy, all right? He struck me as a puppet. He struck me as a guy that did whatever they were telling him to do because he couldn't believe he got an NFL job at that age with that little of a resume. That's the way I got. I don't think any of the three of them really have a good idea of what they're doing. That they won a championship is a miracle. And the fact that they flushed the guy who got it for him because of big balls Doug Peterson, they just let him go, tells you they really don't know what to do even when they do win one.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a report today that says that Roseman and Sirianni are the ones scouring the globe for the latest offensive coordinators, defense coordinators. Does that mean to you that he's coming back?
It could. What will ultimately happen is he will present his plan with the help of Roseman to Lurie, who will sit there with his one championship in 30 years, and he will be the judge of whether Nick is worthy of continuing. And frankly, this is a situation where the blind is leading the blind. All right, Lurie knows. I used to beg Lurie to talk more, Mike, when I was on the air. Well, Lurie's the owner of the Philadelphia Eagles. He's got the most loyal fan base in America. Talk to your fan. Then he would speak, and I would beg him not to speak for as long as possible. Because all he does is pontificate and act. You know what he acts like? A billionaire locked in an ivory tower who never deals with anyone who tells him he's wrong. He's one of these billionaire types, surrounds himself with minions who just nod their head and say, I don't know how you do it, Jeff. You're amazing. That's what I think. So I don't have any faith in him, Mike. I don't have any faith in Lurie.
I agree 100% with everything you're saying about Jeff Lurie, and I've always felt that way about Jeff Lurie. While the world is worshiping Jeff Lurie as a great owner, I go, hey, what does that mean exactly? And Howie Roseman, who was lauded in the city early in the year when they went 10-1, and then the whole thing collapsed on him. And you look at them now, Angelo, they almost look like an expansion team. They need so many positions right now. They need so many starting positions. And you referred to the linebackers. That's the Lurie way, because the analytics say linebackers aren't important in this world.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what's really scary when you use the word analytics. When Lurie was walking in the tunnel after the loss in Tampa, who was standing next to him? Good-looking young man, Julian Lurie, his son, the head of analytics on the team. That's the future. When Jeffrey walks away, whenever that might be, that's your future, the guy handling analytics. And you know how sons work out after fathers. Usually, as James Dolan and Chuck Dolan, how that goes. No, Mike, this is a bad direction for the team right now.
Let's look at Al
And the
Davis
fact
and
that
Mark Davis.
Fleury's son's got power. That's not a healthy situation either.
When I look at Julian Lurie, I get envious. I go, why couldn't I have been the son of a rich guy who owned a football team? You and I weren't raised that way. How come?
I don't know. My favorite quote ever for Jeff Lurie, and I know it's used for many rich guy, but I love it. Jeff Lurie was born on third base and thinks he hit a triple.
Yeah.
He didn't.
He really hasn't accomplished anything on his own. All right. So let's leave this Eagles situation because there's so many things I want to talk to you about. First of all, Ange did 33 years as the premier morning show host, and he's now stepped away from it. And he's got a book out called Loud, which is highly entertaining. I recommend that people get that. First of all, how's the book going? And tell me about this retirement life for you.
Well, the retirement life is great. I don't mind sleeping today. Slept till like 8:45. That's very nice, right? I have no problem with that. The book did really well. The only thing that didn't work out great is that the publisher, I found one publisher in Chicago that would do the book within my time scale. And they had no faith, none at all, that I would sell any books. So the hardcover sold out in 12 hours, right? Wow. And then something unprecedented happened. They issued the paperback immediately. So the following week, the paperback version of it came out. So we lost a lot of hardcover sales because they didn't have a lot of them available, right? But in the end, I did the book tour. I met tons of people, many people mentioning you, Mike, and how you were the heyday of WIP where we were there together, and saying a lot of nice things about the years that we moved from newspapers to there. And then last week, I recorded the audio book. Right? Now nice. They had originally rejected me for I had done a chapter, and they said, "No, you're awful at it. We're going to bring in someone." Right? And I went, "Well, but they listened to that voice for 33 years. That's not great, right?" So finally, they came around. When the book sold, they went, "All right, you know what? We'll do it his way." I was horrible at reading my own book. You have no idea how many times I fumbled and bumbled. They're going to need a month to edit it so it makes sense. It's way harder than you ever would have thought.
Well, because our whole existence, and certainly yours, was off the cuff, and you show genuine emotion, like on the spot emotion. So when you're reading something, you just can't replicate that kind of thing.
Exactly. And then I would every once in a while I'd hit a typo, and I go, "We had 5 editors. How the hell did that happen? How did I miss it?" But I do think that it'll be out in a couple of months, and they're good editors where I went. Now they'll make it sound better than it did. Although there was one great thing. My wife, right near the end, Michael, my wife came on the air without a speech and said these amazing things.
Yeah, I heard it. It was touching.
Emotional things, right? So she comes with me the first day to record the audio book, and I get this idea. Hey, while she's here, she can record the little message. So she sits on the mic. I'm fumbling and bumbling. She nails it one take. Perfect. The whole way through. Sounds like it did on the air. Right? The next day they come to me and they go, "We can't use it. You have to read it yourself."
Oh.
So I'm going, "Oh, Angelo, you gave up so much for your career." Oh, and they're going, "But it sounds like I sound like an idiot reading it myself." But they said this, Mike, you would relate to this being a lawyer. They said a lot of legalities when you put another voice on there.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, I think it'll come out fine. There's going to be some weird, awkward periods in there because I'm reading Ray Didinger's forward, which is also kind of weird. But I think it'll come out great. And the experience was good.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of fun.
You have a phenomenal children's book out too. And I think you should mention it because I'm telling you right now, I have shown it to my grandchildren, and they love your book about the dog.
Oh, that's awesome. The book is, of course, called The Adventures of Shima the Shiba. It's about my dog growing up and has lessons for little kids. So Yeah, you can get that on Amazon.com. I appreciate you mentioning that. I had a lot of fun writing it. And we did a book festival together, the big Collingswood, New Jersey book festival.
That was fun.
It was. So now let me
was.
just quickly touch on Sports Talk Radio in general. It's evident that we went through stage one of Sports Talk Radio. And I don't want to say we created it, but we were in on the front door of Sports Talk Radio. I guess WFAN had started, and we just picked up on that. And we developed Sports Talk Radio in a certain way. And people have asked me about this. What's different now? Because the whole sports talk industry, in my view, has changed. You see the refiltering of people, and you see how younger kids who are producers are getting on the air, and it's just not the same as how we did it. What do you attribute that to?
I honestly think, Mike, that I hate to say this, and I'll apply it to me way more than you. I'm a dinosaur now. My style, my take no prisoners, yell and scream style, reflected the fan base in those years. But I don't think the fan base is the same. They're evolving to a different place that is kinder and gentler, which upsets me. But when they did that standing ovation for Trey Turner, right, my blood boiled. I recoiled at it, Mike. It was like, the guy's hitting 230s, making $300 million. He needs you to stand and give him an ovation. And it worked. He got better. He did better after that. And I went, well, that's not something I ever would have wanted to do. That wasn't the way we thought of things.
No, because it was fanish. And the last thing we wanted to be was fanish.
Yes.
And here's what, I'll give you a theory on that. Okay, this is the discussion I got into. We were take no prisoners because we were a product of newspapers where columnists would take no prisoners because we were the only source. We were the only source of protection for the fan base. And so columnists, like the old columnists, which come barreling at you. And you would, in covering the Eagles, came barreling at Buddy Ryan after every game. So that set the template for what Sports Talk Radio, but it was engineered by the newspaper thing of go at people, be the consumer advocate. And it's not that way anymore.
Mike, I said this in the book, right? When I went to Columbia, like I told my advisor, I want someday to go into sports. And Columbia University, Graduate School of Journalism, it's managing editors, it's foreign correspondence. And a guy looks at me like I burped in front of him. He went, no, you're not serious. No. And he finally got me to say, look, if you're going to do it like a journalist, cover it like the White House. Ask hard questions. Hold them accountable. And that's the journalism background that we had. You understand? So you were the same way. When you were a writer, you covered teams. You weren't afraid to ask the tough question and put the coach or put the players on the grill. And there's way less of that now. Yeah, and I think that's part of it.
You know, it's funny because I remember as a kid and growing up in the city, and I'm reading Stan Hochman just eviscerate somebody. And I'm going, that's awesome. He made that guy accountable. That guy screwed up. And now if you go there today, the fan base goes, that's unfair. And they want to like wrap their arms around the player or the coach that is being criticized. It's a transition that it's evident to me. It's just, I guess, a reflection of the world changing.
Here's the part that gets me. All right, these newspapers that have softened it, and boy, have they ever. They are not in a business partnership with the teams. The sports agent, WIP, which we were at for a long time, they have business arrangements with the Eagles and the Phillies. So there's that added ingredient that if you go over the top with those teams, they will call and they will say to your bosses, back him off or else. And the threat would be, we'll go to the other station. Well, here's what I learned about that. All right, Mike. If I ripped the Eagles, if I ripped Jeff Lurie for 5 years, every day, 4 hours a day, and then when it came time to do the next broadcast deal, WIP offered 12 cents more than the station you were at. All right. I didn't even want to give them publicity. They screwed you. All right. If they gave him 12 cents more, Lurie took the most money. All right. None of that mattered. Say what you feel. Don't be afraid of it. But nowadays, everybody's careful. I didn't believe
and listen, I don't want to come off like the old man yelling somebody get off my lawn. I understand the world changes. It's just that there were different eras. We had the original era of sports talk radio, and now it's just different. I think most people would agree that it's different, and that doesn't make it bad. It just makes it different.
Exactly, Mike, and I have to embrace that. Although I am still the old man who will yell at the kids to get off the lawn. I take pride in it.
All right, last thing. Anything about St. Martin? This is a backwards question for you, for Lori. St. Martin is half Dutch and half French. And the French side has a nude beach, which I have been on. It's called Orient Bay.
I have pictures from it.
Really? Jeff, do you think,
Mike, it's not good.
Do you think Jeff Lurie is taking it off at Orient Bay right now?
That is so rude. That's how you always got in trouble, Mike.
You think I goes to St. Martin? He goes, no, there's nobody here would ever recognize me. I'm just gonna walk naked on the beach. Do you think that happens?
I was in St. Martin, and I walked from the attired side to the naked side, and there was an old man with a beer belly wearing a thong, a yellow thong. This was 15 years ago. The fact that I'm still referencing it, and now you have me picturing Lurie in a thong.
I just wondered, if you're there, why not? And I'm just thinking maybe he needed that kind of a release, that he's just walking naked on the beach with the surf coming in, the whole bit. I don't want to picture it, but maybe, All right.
Well, he definitely know the tides because his son is in charge of analytics.
Angelo, always a pleasure, man. Thank you so much, and keep enjoying yourself. Mike. And we'll run into each other somewhere down the road. Thanks so much, Angelo Cataldi. I love talking to Ange when he comes on the show. And this was a little sports analysis rather than just getting into his career and my career and all that kind of stuff. But we did kind of touch on the sports talk radio situation in Philadelphia now. It's just different. It's, we thought we had to do it a certain way, and those ways are probably gone. And I know you may like the old way, you may like the new way. I don't know what it is, but it's changed. All right, let's touch on your Philadelphia 76ers, who are quietly having a really good year. And we really haven't talked a lot about the Sixers, but their win over the Denver Nuggets the other night was a classic win. That was a great win. It was a great basketball game to watch. Two offenses in the first half going at each other. The Sixers winning it. The Jokic-Embiid matchup. The only problem with the Jokic-Embiid matchup, and Embiid came off the mat, by the way, hadn't played in several days, to drop 41 on fools against the Nuggets. Those two guys weren't guarding each other. And everybody likes to look at the mano-a-mano situation with the two best centers in the league, who are the two best candidates for MVP, and they're not playing each other. And I get why, because you don't want to get either guy in foul trouble. So both teams managed their way through that game. And Jokic and Embiid matched up a couple times, but not a lot. And that's, I guess, the safe way to play it in the NBA. But right now, the Sixers are in the second spot in the Eastern Conference. To me, the Eastern Conference is Boston and everybody else. The Celtics have won 21 straight games at home. They're 21-0. So they're clearly the gold standard in the Eastern Conference. The Sixers hanging in there in the second spot, which is really interesting because at first I thought the Sixers weren't going to be as good as Milwaukee, but Milwaukee can't guard anybody. They're in the third spot. They got hammered the other night. Now, Giannis didn't play, but there's something missing with that Bucks team. So I think the Sixers can hold on to that second position for the rest of the season. Now, the team you got to watch now, because they make big trade for Pascal Siakam, the Indiana Pacers. And we'll see how that changes their scope. They're a good team, but they're not in that upper echelon yet. We'll see if Siakam can make them put them in that upper echelon. Here's the way we stand here: is if the playoffs were to start, there's of course a long way to go for the playoffs. There's a trading deadline. It's coming up February 2nd, where the Sixers can make a significant move to help themselves. Right now, it's Boston, the Sixers at 2, Milwaukee at 3, Pacers at 4, Cavaliers 5, Heat 6, and then you got the play-in people: the Knicks, Magic, Bulls, and Hawks. I think the Knicks and Magic will survive those playoff series to get into the playoffs. So that means Boston would play the 8th-seeded the Orlando Magic. The Sixers will be matched up in a series against the Knicks in the first round. Now, they're better than the Knicks, but you never know. That could be a long series because the Knicks are spunky. The Milwaukee Bucks would then play the Heat in a first-round series. Oh, my God, look at that revenge situation. And then the Pacers and the Cavaliers, if form holds. Now, in the second round, the NBA does not reseed, mind you. So it would be Boston against the winner of the Pacers and the Cavaliers, and the Sixers would play the winner of the Milwaukee and Heat series. That would be your second round series. So there you go. If you want to project the playoffs, a little early to project the playoffs, but the Sixers in a good spot in that 2-hole right now because I think they've proven they're just a tad better than Milwaukee, and we'll see how that shakes out. All right, let's take a look back at the NFL playoffs with the when did the Eagles play? Darren, when?
In about 8 months, Mike.
Yeah, the Eagles are playing golf, but other teams are playing this weekend. So let's go over the schedule. On Saturday, you got the Texans at the Ravens. The Ravens are 9.5-point favorite. A lot of big lines this weekend. And also on Saturday night, 8:15, the Packers at the 49ers. The Niners at 9.5-point favorite. Sunday, you get the Bucks at the Lions. The Lions 6.5 over the Bucks. And the night game at 6:30, the Chiefs at the Bills. The game of the weekend. The Bills favored by 2.5. So let's go through our fearless picks. And I might add that yours truly, Mike Missanelli, with other people on the BetRivers Network, I slayed Jimmy Ott and Adam the Bull in our national contest, a yearly picks. In fact, I was on Jimmy Ott's show. Jimmy Ott in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Darren. I was on his show a little earlier. Getting congratulations, but I beat this guy just by the skin of my teeth. I won by one game, and it was the Eagles. I actually took the Bucks to cover in that game and wound up winning the whole contest. That might be a violation, but I won the contest. All right,
Gladiator, I salute you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Texans at the Ravens. This is a tough call for me. Now, Baltimore's rested. They're ferocious. That's a big line. I think the Texans are spunky enough to keep it close. I don't know if the Ravens blow them out. So the line indicates that the Ravens will blow them out. But I'm going to take a chance and take the Texans with 9.5 in this game. And the night game, the Packers at the 49ers, I think the Packers' magic has run out. I'll take the Niners to cover the 9.5. We go to the Bucks and Lions. This is another game. I don't know how the Bucks will respond. They had an easy draw last week. Let's face it. You saw the lack of competitiveness in the team that they played, and I don't know if that served them that well to play the Lions. They got the Lions' attention, actually, by beating the Eagles like that. So I think the Lions are actually going to cover the 6.5. The Lions, a 6.5-point favorite in a playoff game. What is the world coming to? I'll take Detroit, and then I'll take the Bills. I just think the Bills are better. And they're playing in Buffalo. I'll take the Bills to cover the 2.5. They win it by a field goal. Darren, what say you?
I agree with you on all 4 games. I do think Houston can keep it close. I think San Francisco is going to wax the Packers. Lions, I think, cover the 6.5. Tampa Bay is not that good, despite what they did to the Eagles the other night. And I agree with you on Buffalo. I think if there's one team that has a shot against Baltimore, it's the Bills. And 2.5 is a little light. Win by a field goal at home. I think that's going to be the game of the week by far. But yeah, I agree with you on all 4 games. The 2 games I like the most, though, if you're throwing a wager down, are San Francisco minus the 9.5. I think they're going to truck Green Bay, and I like Buffalo to win by a field goal at least at home.
All righty. And that'll do it for today. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed the podcast today, Mike Missanelli podcast. At the end of the week, coming to you as we go into an NFL football weekend. You can check me out on Twitter, MikeMiss25, or you can email me at mike@mikemiss.com. And I'm glad Angelo gave me a little plug for my book. I love to sell some more children's books. Here's the thing. When I sell a children's book, 20% of the proceeds go to animal shelters, and I will personalize the book for you if you can get it to me somehow. I put my dog, I have a stamp with my dog's paw that I put in it because she actually signs it to the people who buy it. So Shima's signature will be on it. And you can go to Amazon.com to check out that book and a book that I wrote a long time ago called The Perfect Season, which is the last Penn State National Championship. And probably in my lifetime, that will be the last Penn State National Championship. All right, everybody have a great rest of the week. Stay warm out there. This damn ice. For Darren, I'm Mike. We'll check you out next week. Bye-bye, everybody.